when I'm getting to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy. Let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. My camera was off there. This is what happens when you share screens, you guys. But we are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. This is your first time tuning in. Welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And you know the rest of the intro, guys. We're going to jump in and get this interview started here in just a couple of minutes. But you guys know what we got to do. We got to jump in to This Week in Freight, powered by my friends over at DAT. And again, you guys, this is 100% viewer submitted. This is a lane analysis. I'm not here to tell you what to quote. I'm telling you how I personally read markets, how I take this information, present it to my customers that I actually move freight with, and earn freight 12 months out of the year out there, because the rate changes, you guys, but markets perform eerily similar to each other year in and year out, and it's our job to find that stability and bring it down. Today's lane, it is a drive in, and we are breaking down Los Angeles, California to Seattle, Washington. I've probably moved this lane more than any lane in the entirety of my career. And right now, obviously it's spiked, right? Like, we're seeing this out there. It's spiked up, but it's remained stable. And what you'll see here, and this is why I want a lot of us to look at the 12-month cycle here, is you saw a little bit of a peak last July, right? i.e. 4th of July. And then things kind of start to dip on this lane. And then it picks back up again in November, i.e. around Christmas tree season and everything else. So you see how this market will probably perform. Now, fuel right now is exponentially higher out west than it is in any other part of the country. And that's a big barometer on why you see the absolute spike in rates on this lane in particular. But you're going to see now, and this is kind of like no man's land of the freight market across multiple modes. And this is the time of year between the 4th of July and Labor Day where things kind of like settle down. I can't tell you what specific thing is going on out there in the economy, that what drives a lot of this, but I've just experienced over the entirety of my career that between the 4th of July and about 2 weeks before Labor Day, things are kind of mum, right? Like, outside of a catastrophic event happening that could spike things back up, I see this lane in particular as one of the more stable lanes that are out there, because there is never a shortage of capacity that runs the I-5. There are legitimate carriers that only run the I-5 between Los Angeles and Seattle. So you're never going to find a shortage of capacity on this lane. And again, I'm looking at that 90-day mark here, you guys, about like, that's the stabilization factor that I look for on if I think rates are going to continue to trend up or trend down. They're still kind of hovering up here a little bit out there, but I would anticipate the further we get into August, you're going to probably see a dip in this. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how much, because it probably won't be much, just due to the fact that fuel is $2 a gallon higher out here than it is in any other part of the country. But the next big thing that we always look at when we're assessing any lane is the miles. What do I mean by that? Average rule of thumb, transit times, and stuff like that, now more than ever, are very much going to matter. This is a 2+ day transit lane at a minimum, all right? 1,135 miles. I go on the general rule of thumb of 500 miles a day that are out there. And so if this lane is shipping Thursday to Monday, you're probably going to see a higher price point on this. This is a pretty good weekend run, especially for those drivers trying to get their trucks back up home into the Pacific Northwest. But again, this is a great Monday through Wednesday lane. You'll probably see a better price on that day as opposed to Thursday or Friday. You'll see a more elevated rate on that one. And that's just those weekend runs that you see. But, again, this is one of those lanes, you guys, that does very much it's like the antithesis of a power lane out there. So you're never going to have a shortage of carriers that are willing to take this lane. I think that the market is probably at its peak right now for what you'll see from a pricing perspective. I would expect it to kind of dip off here a little bit going into Labor Day. But then again, Q4 could be nuts. It could be gangbuster out there. But I think that now more than ever, you guys, things have stabilized across the market. All right. Like I talk about often when I do this lane analysis, we can't just look at a national average and expect that to kind of be the selling point across the country. Capacity is normalized, at least for the freight that I'm moving out there. Right. This isn't everywhere. That's not to say that there aren't pockets of tightness, but things have normalized and they have stabilized out there. And be the voice of reason to your customers this summer when a lot of people are going to sell on fear, shortage, all of this stuff that's going on in the Middle East. That's their entire sales pitch to try and earn more business. I like to take the opposite approach to that. It's business as usual for me. I've seen this before. This market is performing just like any other market that has for a typical carrier market that we're in right now. And that should be the messaging out there. Capacity is stable. Be the voice of reason out there for your customers. But that is This Week in Freight, powered by my friends over at DAT. This is Los Angeles, California to Seattle, Washington. And again, if you want this your lane broken down on the show, you guys email my team, podcast@thefreightcoach.com, and we will break it down. But let's jump into the show, you guys. Let's talk about the freight cycle. What's going on out there? What are we seeing? And what technology are we going to start utilizing here? And I want to welcome my good friend, Kary Jablonski, back on the show. Kary, thank you so much for joining me in sunny Seattle, Washington. Or is it sunny today?
It is sunny. Yeah, I can see the sun coming out here. I was wondering if you picked that lane because of the conversation we're having about the PNW before this.
It was entirely ironic that you have since moved and that happened to be, I chose this lane yesterday to go in and break this one down. And then you're like, oh, hey, I'm in the Seattle office. This
meant to be. That's so funny.
Definitely is. So what's going on in your world? How are things?
Things are great. Yeah, a lot going on. Personally, yeah, I did just move out to Seattle. I know that's really the big thing in my life. We've got a great team here. We opened a big office here last July. We bought Outgo, which is our financial services platform, really focused, especially on the carrier factoring space right now. That's growing like gangbusters. And we completed the acquisition of Convoy, which has also been just a massive, massive addition to the DAT team. So opened up a big office and made the decision personally, worked out well for me and my family to come out here. I wanted to be in office with the people. We got a gong now. I should have brought that into my office. I could bring it for you. So I'm psyched to be here and building with the team.
No, I love it. There is something about being in a room with your people. Like it's unrivaled, right? Like I know like the appeal and allure of like working remote and everything, but like there's just something about that energy of being when you're working with the right team and all out there trying to accomplish the same mission. I love that in-person environment.
I couldn't agree more. It's big for me. I was working remotely for 5 or so years, probably, while leading Trucker Tools, which was awesome for us. I think, especially as we're a smaller business. So talent was, we really had to make it a really exciting place to be and could hire from any market across the country, which was great for us. And I spent many of those years just on the road myself, flying in and out of Chicago. But I'm really psyched to be in office. And it's interesting in freight too. It does feel like so many of the freight tech businesses are kind of remote centric, or maybe that trend is starting to move back towards the office. But everyone in this business talks about how it's so important to be in person, so important to be building relationships. That's why conferences are so critical. So I'm really thrilled to have that be part of my daily life now.
No, meeting with people in, showing up and having conversations, whether it's with your customers, potential customers, vendors, everybody that's inside of your network, I personally think is going to come back at such a higher level just due to the fact that everything is automated, right? Like everything is via Zoom. And I just look at it where like, you can't uningrain an entire human history of DNA of like needing that tribalism. And I just think that it's going to come back here. And I think that your ability to get in front of people and be with people is going to, I think, be a very large deciding factor if you want to work with anybody. And again, obviously there's a huge group of people who are like automation only, like I don't want to talk to a person. Cool. That's for you. But like, I still think the masses crave that in-person thing. And, speaking of that, what are people telling you right now out there? I mean, you obviously talk to more brokers than probably most people. What's the general sentiment you're hearing out there and what the market's going?
Yeah, I think in general, kind of market wise, things are much better than they were last year. Everyone's glad to be, back moving up into the right. I think overall, it's still kind of a slightly, tepid isn't the right word, but a little bit of a less than ideal sort of recovery, because in general, we're seeing shipment volumes are actually trending down right now. So there's a little bit of a disconnect in the market. Shipment volumes are down, expenditures are up because rates are moving up, likely due to the capacity crunch, like we were talking about, a lot of capacity opting to leave the market in addition to fuel costs. So it's not a great story. I think what we'd all prefer is really a demand-driven recovery. Housing starts were down actually. In June, permits were down. You've got interest rates still high. So it's not a great like celebratory market recovery, but everyone's in a much better spot than they were, say, 8-12 months ago. I think the dominant story continues to be certainly, fraud and trust and safety. But layered behind that is the Montgomery ruling, and thinking about every broker out there is taking a different approach to how do we make sure that we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's as we wade into uncharted territory in the new landscape.
No, and that's the thing, right? Where it's like, I look at it from a high level perspective. I think what the FMCSA out there doing that is forcing capacity to leave the market, I think is a very good thing. But you talk about expenditures being up, and we talk about this on the show often. A lot of carriers, I mean, because like we book so many of the exact same carriers on a lot of our freight, right? Like 80 to 85% of the freight that we move is with the same trucking companies on a lane by lane basis. And that took a dip there when fuel prices shot up. And a lot of it is a lot of these trucking companies are like, I can't afford to run out west anymore. Like, it doesn't make any sense because I'm burning through more fuel. My fuel lines of credit are going up. And then so it's like they've chosen to reconfigure where they're going to service. And then, now, I mean, it's no secret that Chicago is a massive hub for capacity out there. The Midwest is paying just as good, if not better, than any other part of the country. So why not run less miles, less wear and tear on your equipment, and put more money in your pocket, get your drivers home every night? No, yeah, granted, there's still going to be drivers out there who just want miles, want to run, but I don't know of any driver out there who would not want to take a higher rate to drive less.
Yeah, totally. The lane that you had up earlier was really interesting for that reason. I mean, just personally in my life, I just moved from the Midwest to the West Coast, and fuel out here for me in my car is $2 a gallon more expensive. So, you just multiply that by the number of miles that these guys are running. It'll be interesting to see how that dynamic continues to play out the longer fuel rates or fuel prices continue to stay elevated.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, right? Like I had a carrier of ours explain to me, he's like, listen, it might not, he's like, yeah, it looks great because we're making more money on paper on the front end. But he's like, right, if we don't get extensions in credit from our fuel line or our line of credit from our bank, he's like, we're burning through 6 weeks worth of fuel in 3 weeks now. And he's like, I don't know of anybody who's going to pay me faster, who's going to, and do that. And so it's like, it forced a lot of operators to look at what areas of the country that they're going to service and continue to service, and what makes the most financial sense, right? Like I think, and that's an area that a lot of brokers are kind of experiencing for the first time, where it's like in a broker market, drivers will essentially take any lane out there, right? Like they just need to keep their truck moving. They've been sitting for a couple of days. So some of those obscure lanes are very easy to cover. And now you're seeing a seismic shift out there where it's like, unless you have dedicated capacity that you work with and you've worked with in the past on these obscure lanes, those are the ones that are going to start to fail first in a lot of shippers' routing guides and everything else, right? So it's like that's where that window of opportunity starts to creep in. But it's like, but then again, like this is to me is like where, tie in technology. This is where you need to be leveraging technology, right? Like every brokerage has so much more data than they're even aware of.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is where you leverage it to start packing a larger punch out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that you just summed up exactly what we're trying to do here, which is bring order to that data and connect those systems so that brokers can make better decisions based on what they're already sitting on top of and the benefit of what, we as such a massive platform with all this data in the space can bring to them. So it's been really interesting to talk with some leaders in the space over the last couple of months, especially again in this post-Montgomery world. And in this market where volatility has actually finally returned after really just limping along kind of flatline for the last 2 or 3 years. And it's been really, I think, motivating for me and our team here at DAT because we thrive in times of market uncertainty and volatility. And it never ceases to strike me how critical we are. And I take that really seriously, that we are mission critical for our brokers to make good decisions when they need it, to make them quickly and where margins continue to be as thin as they are.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like that's another talking point out there right now is people are shocked that brokers' margins are getting compressed. And we were talking about this on the show where it's like a lot of people early on were celebrating, oh, it's a market shift, we're needing this. I'm like, there's only going to be so much leash that a shipper is going to give in regards to increasing prices before it hits the ceiling, and then carriers are going to still creep up their prices, and then brokers' margins are going to get compressed out there. But again, that's not every carrier that plays that game. Like we have a handful of carriers that they are very like, I don't want to make it sound like we're paying substantially under market by any stretch of the imagination, but we're still able to provide a very competitive price out there to our customers. And our customers have told us this, hey, you're still cheaper than the majority of people out there. And it's because we're not taking advantage of the market for what it is. Mm-hmm. We found those guys who are like, hey, listen, these are the rates we need. If you can get us this rate, we'll take it, because we have that track record with them, Kary, where they're like, we're familiar with your shippers. We're familiar with your receivers. We know their operations. We know we're going to get loaded quick, offloaded quick, and you pay us on time. Therefore, we're going to work with you at a below market rate because we took care of them in the last cycle. We were paying them up at or above market, and we never touched their prices, right? Like if they told us we need $1,500, we knew we could get it for 13 or 12 if we went out there to the open market. But at what cost though? It into our margins. We knew how they performed. We knew their communication, and we wanted to provide that consistency to our customers.
Yeah. Well, you're playing the long-term game. That's why, you're making decisions on how do I retain and build my carrier base, which is fundamentally the business you're providing to your shippers. So you're investing in high quality capacity for the long haul. So I'm not surprised you're making that decision, but it's really interesting what you just said, because it's so much of what we're talking about relates directly to the problems we're trying to solve every day. We're actually right now piloting a bid and book now capability with a couple of our large broker partners where we're developing, we've been talking about this for a while, our carrier management suite, which is essentially a way for brokers to upload carrier lists, be able to manage which carriers either within their network or outside their network based on qualification settings, age of authority, basics information, all of that, can see the loads that are posted. And brokers are able to give permission to their super trusted kind of in-network dedicated capacity, like you're talking about, to bid and book their freight digitally on DAT. And the whole genesis of that is we want to drive reuse of this capacity because that's good for the brokerage in the long term, while driving down the cost to serve. Not just, not talking about actual rates, but the actual OpEx that goes behind every single load booked by a brokerage. There's something like $150 is the rough estimate we have of OpEx per load served. Between a lot of that's on actually sourcing the carrier, phone calls, emails, all of that. Then you've got tracking, everything downstream. And that by bringing that on platform, we think we can save brokers, $20, $30, $50, maybe even by bringing even just that bidding or negotiation on platform. And kind of same thing, if you don't have a carrier who is someone you know and we've worked with, and you've given that permission to book. That's the entire kind of thesis behind our Convoy platform that we've rolled out, or that we're growing quite quickly right now, is use this to find capacity and execute loads in a totally different cost structure than you would be able to do with people at the helm. And I think that's probably, again, I'm not an economist, there's probably some major macroeconomic shifts in economic kind of things happening in the brokerage industry. But I have to imagine, the only way to survive in the future with the margin compression, this like structural margin compression that all brokers are experiencing, is you have to adopt technology to drive down your cost to serve, both for your dedicated capacity and for new capacity that you're sourcing.
Yeah, I think that your ability to operate very lean is going to become very much a requirement here in the not so distant future.
Yep.
And it's going to go deeper than a cost plus model. And it's like, I look at it from like just the access to information alone, right? Like how many shippers are on your guys' platform, right? Like people know what they are supposed to pay on almost every lane that they're moving. Now, most shippers are very aware that circumstances play into a lot of those things, but data to me is the thing that I think a lot of brokers might overlook at who has access to said data.
Mm-hmm.
And then people are going to see a lot of this information. Then again, people who are automation focused, right? Because it's like where I personally think automation is going to have the biggest impact in there is who is going to be the operations that automate 95% of the non-customer and non-carrier facing tasks. Like it can get to that point now where it's like, the only thing I don't want automated, because I openly talk about this, right? I want to build $100 million operation with 10 people. I think automation today already allows that. Where it's going to be in 6 months or 12 months is it's almost a guarantee that I can be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, what I think is important about what you're talking about with data and automation is something we've spent a lot of time thinking about with our customers and building as a tech company, is that context is actually what makes automation reliable. And you can build kind of RPA or, just process that happens. But the challenge with freight is there's so much nuance. There's so much tribal knowledge. There's so much, this is how we, have always vetted carriers, or this is how we always set our rates. This is how, we run our processes. Until you can actually digitize that context and ingest it into the automation, it's going to be hard to be totally hands off. And that is what is so exciting about what we're building, is that because we've got both the data layer and the automation layer, kind of the entire suite of tools, we're able to bring that context into automation and help you make really good decisions, consistent monitoring to understand if something changing in the background and alerting you when a decision, something should be different. It's happening on Trucker Tools. It's happening with our Convoy platform, bringing our data in and providing that to the broker to inform the decisions they're putting on autopilot, so they feel confident about who's on the other side of the transaction. That's what it takes to make this happen.
Yeah, I look at with a lot of the transactions that are done out there. You brought up tribal knowledge, for example. I don't know everything about this industry, but I know a lot of information. Why wouldn't I want to utilize that to help build better processes? Why wouldn't I want to utilize that to make better buying decisions that are out there? And again, it's like, I think that people are so reactionary and especially right now, right? Like they are very reactionary in their carrier sourcing and everything else. And it's like, there are drivers out there. You think of the most obscure lane in North America. There are multiple trucking companies out there that run that every single day, and you do not even know who they are. And it's like, this is where this is where automation, a lot of the tools that you're describing, uncovers a lot of that capacity. And then on top of it, with all of the rulings that are coming down, and I don't think we've even remotely scratched the surface of what could come down, you need to find these guys, right? Like you need to have a very rock solid process on this is what we do to minimize outside exposure to your customers' freight. I think a lot of shippers of all sizes are going to start requiring a blueprint of what their providers are utilizing out there and what they do to ensure that their freight hopefully doesn't end up in one of these situations.
Yeah. That's certainly what we're hearing from the brokers we're talking to. And we're just constantly working on how do we evolve our platform to make sure, again, we have so much data flowing through this. How can we help brokers feel really, really secure and ironclad in what data they're using to make decisions and have a nice paper trail for that.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess what are some of those things, right? Like how can people leverage this right now? You're describing a lot of different sites and there. How do brokers leverage this? How do providers leverage this out there into the market when they're talking to their customers or even their fleets?
Yeah. I mean, the Convoy platform is certainly one of my top focuses right now. And it's been really, really exciting to see over the last several months, we've had a bunch of our largest brokers start to go live with the product as we've been building our TMS integrations and starting to embed more deeply within and bring together with DAT. And what is so powerful about Convoy is I think a lot of folks think, okay, we bought this for the automation technology. And yes, that's all great. What's really powerful about it is the constant monitoring system that's running in the background to make sure it is the most secure network possible, and validating kind of carrier information. We've got a lot of proprietary data science behind how it works. So our rate of theft or any sort of kind of fraud is essentially near zero. And we've completed close to, I think, certainly probably 1 million shipments at this point on the platform. So that is where I direct brokers first and foremost. It's essentially like adding an extension of your carrier pod or adding a new carrier pod to your sales floor with an always on monitoring capability so that you can really feel good about the decisions you're making. The other thing I'd say is our carrier management suite. We're doing a full launch later this fall, but we've got kind of some early features rolling out now where maybe not number one, but one of the top pieces of feedback I get and we get from brokers is, we post a load, it's great, we get 1 million phone calls, but 80% of those are carriers I don't want to work with or I can't work with for different reasons. So what we're building in are filters on top of and in your ability to set custom filters, custom lists so that you can post different freight to the board that is only bookable by carriers that actually meet your criteria. So that you're not getting calls from carriers. If you're not a day one shop, you're not getting call from day one carriers. So I'd say those are probably the two biggest things. Of course, trucker tools, we could always talk about that too. We've got our proactive driver verification that allows you to actually receive real photos, not uploads or anything else, AI generated things of carriers in front of trucks. CDLs, whatever it is you need to verify that a driver is where they say they are, has what they say they have. And then we've got our always on monitoring there as well and in fraud alerts. So just kind of across the entire freight life cycle, we're investing in capabilities that build that data base to help you feel really confident of, who's moving your load, what's happening with it, and when you need to lean in if there's an exception on the horizon.
Do you think there's any potential vulnerabilities in the freight transaction that most brokers aren't even really aware of that's kind of happening right now?
There have to be. Absolutely. I don't know if I want to share broadly. That's we're always kind of catching on to new patterns when we're monitoring. Our security team is working overtime to always be a step ahead of fraudsters and uncovering patterns. And it really is, you have to stay a step ahead because there's a lot of savvy bad actors out there. And we've seen just this kind of cycle over the past many years, buying and selling of MCs and all that. It's evolved so quickly that I'm confident it's going to continue to be an issue. So what you need to do is, as a broker, what I would think about doing is actually just making sure you have the most secure kind of monitoring capabilities and drive as much activity on platform as possible so you have that trail.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And I was just thinking about that because it's like that's something that I think a lot of people, again, back to that reactionary mindset. I mean, this is why you need to partner with people who are in the data and vulnerability side of things, because it's like what mainstream is talking about today is probably already been forgotten about by like the fraudulent actors who are always looking for that next thing to try and break in, right? Because it's like, and a lot of it comes up because, like my longtime partners of the show, the NMFDA, the cybersecurity conference that they put on every year, like I've learned so much from that aspect of things. And then now to see where the entire digitization is of this industry, I'm like, there are so many more vulnerabilities that are out there from people that I don't know if they're even aware of yet. And this is why it's like the more of trying to think of the best way to put this, the more you have more of your systems that are put online, the more vulnerabilities you're going to get, and the more people are going to be looking for that loophole. So it's like that constant monitoring piece that you're talking about behind the scenes, I think is probably the most integral part of most brokerage operations moving forward. You need something going on behind the scenes because that they're looking for that. They're looking for that stress test of like, all right, where can we get in? Where can we get access? And that's why you need something working there to keep the bad actors as far away from this stuff as possible. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so fundamental to how we're building out the marketplace. It can't be safe and secure until we actually have the data. And we've got that kind of capability rolling out at scale.
Yeah. Data is key, you guys. You have a ton of it out there and you need to implement it, utilize it, find out how do you make better decisions for your business? And then most importantly, how to protect your customers. And then on top of it, how do you protect the right carriers out there? Because that I think is an almost forgotten part of this equation it's like, we got to protect the right carriers to keep them in business to outlast a lot of these bad actors out there. But, Kary, I know we're up on time. This flew by as it always does with you. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you got going on?
Yeah, just ping me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there, or shoot me an email, Kary.Jablonski@dat.com. Would love to hear from folks.
Perfect. Kary, thank you so much for your time. That's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank that show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the bag. Hey, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast.